Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are finishing up the work week on a Friday with 5 games in the NBA. We both think it's a little bit small. We like those big Friday night slates, but there still are a few games that we like on here. So we've got a couple games for you and our player props video as we bring you each and every weekday. So like and subscribe to that page. Also head to thelines.com. That's where you can check out all of our great written content all season and use our odds finder tool on there. That's where we give you guys the best odds available to you from all those sports books giving you NBA bets this season. Nate, let's go ahead and get into this 5-game slate and then talk about our first game. The Dubs are hosting the Raptors.
Yeah, and we also do a video on this first one. The Bucks are -7.5 at Pacers, total of 237 there. Of course, Halliburton is still out for Indy. Then we got Memphis -3 at Minnesota, always a rivalry game when those two meet. That is also a 237 total. Cavs made quick work of the Rockets here on Thursday night, and they're in a pick'em at the Thunder. Should be a good one to watch. Tough to predict, I think. Magic +7 at the Heat with a 218 total. And then, Raptors open +6. It's now +5 as people are jumping on that a little bit. And the total's standing pretty steady at 229.5, which definitely seems too low regardless of the opponent when you come to the Chase Arena here and face the Warriors, the way they've been able to put up points and the way they've been pretty inconsistent defensively down the stretch. I mean, you called this team an enigma. I won't argue with you there, but I think I know a little bit more about what the Raptors are. And I know they got OG Anunoby back from a brief absence and put the clamps on Sacramento, which is a great offense, but it's a completely different challenge. This is like the number one half-court offense in the league against the worst half-court offense in the league in Toronto. But the Warriors are playing freewheeling, undisciplined basketball in transition. And I think the Raptors will have no problem getting out in the open court and getting points that way. They're actually a better defensive team on the road as Toronto, but they're 28th in transition D in fast break efficiency. Bottom 10 in giving up free throw attempts. Golden State is bottom 5 in that department at home, and really struggling to guard the 3-point line lately, allowing 43% in their last 3. So I think even with OG back, I mean, he's known as like the best ISO defender, right? So that's almost a moot point when you play the Warriors. It's like, well, they're not going to ISO on anybody. It's going to be, again, great ball movement. I mean, I do look for Toronto. I said like that freewheeling style getting out on the floor. Warriors continue to turn the ball over at a high clip, right? So that's points off turnovers is what Toronto needs to make their hay. Also second chance points, which is, all these categories you put in here, fast break points. Golden State's bottom 10 in January. And that's why they haven't really been able to cover as home favorites. So that's why they've surprisingly not been able to pull away from teams, even with Steph Curry back when they were looking good without him. I kind of expect that to stop, though. I expect the Warriors to pull away in this game for sure. I just don't think Toronto has the firepower to keep pace. I've talked about how they limit stars, guys with high usage like Siakam. Don't necessarily expect him to have a great game against Draymond and company. And there's just a little superior depth and much, much superior shooting from the Warriors, who shoot at a higher clip at home. You know, the big knock on Toronto is that they don't have that perimeter spacing, and that, they need to look for something at the trade deadline to shore up that roster and get something, or to just start rebuilding. And right now on the road, I mean, they've been just hemorrhaging points lately. 5 of their last 7 have gone over, but even at a slow pace, 93 pace, and the Warriors have been playing at a 103 pace in their last 10 at home here. So I definitely think this is a good spot for the over. If you can get it around 230, it might get bet up a little bit, but I don't think Toronto's shutting them down the way they held Sacramento in check.
Yeah, it's not the same for sure. It's a bit of a different style to a degree. Although, I mean, to a degree, I mean, a good passing big man was something that the Dubs have had in the past, and you can still give Kevon Looney some love there. But at any rate, I like Toronto to cover about 6.5, 5.5, 5. That's why I think it's getting bet down early. I bet it at 6.5 right when I saw it. And really at this point, I hope this video comes out and you see that it's still about 5 or more, because then I still really like Toronto. And the reason I like it more than a total is just really which Dubs team is going to show up. If it is the team that's been struggling to cover at home and really even to win at home in their last 5, then I don't know, 114 points a game with 114 offensive rating, because they're always going to play at that blistering pace. But I don't know. Like, I guess at the end of the day, to be honest with the total, like, I'd prefer the over, just because don't really look at the over totals for the Dubs in their last 5 home games. Like, I'm not as concerned with them because of the fact that it's been like 245, 236, 232. So like they're all pretty high anyway. And this one, I'm not really even worried about the pace as much, just because of the fact that Toronto's been playing at a super duper slow pace and still kind of going under. But I'm just really impressed with them. And I think my narrative for this game, Nate, and the reason I'm talking about Toronto like this is because as away dogs, what they've been doing, 5-1 in their last 6 against the spread, and 4-2 straight up. And they're just playing teams tough that when it's sort of their back against the wall, and OG's playing for them helps a lot. But it's really mostly about, what like the fact that they're at this point in the season where I don't think they want to blow it up. They don't want to get rid of guys like OG Anunoby, or even Gary Trent Jr. They want to keep it together. And I think against teams that they're, are quality teams, they've sort of been bringing it. So their defensive ratings down to 114 in those last 6, 110 points allowed. Their offensive ratings up to 120, scoring 115 points. All those numbers are a little bit low because they're playing at that 93 pace, but still 4-2 to the over, because they're getting some kind of low totals, to be honest, is also why. I think at times they've had a little bit of a lower total that they get to go over, but they've been averaging 13 made threes on 38% on the season. 10 threes a game on 33%. So that's what you're talking about with those struggles. But, when you have OG in there, at least you have one more guy who's at least a threat to shoot it from the corner. And Gary Trent's been super hot, and Fred VanVleet's finally shooting a little bit better from the horrible start that he had to the season. They are, allowing a few less fast break points, but they still allow a ton, which is what I think we both like when we talk about an over in this one. Is just not even necessarily the pace, it's just transition, because Toronto knows that, like you said, they basically have the worst half-court offense in today's NBA, where you need to be able to have at least 3, if not 4 guys who can make a 3 on the floor at once, and they rarely have more than 3, if not 2 for the most part, that you actually feel is a threat to score. So I think the fast break points is something you can continue to expect. They've been doing a much better job at rebounding as well. 7th in rebound percentage in this stretch on the road, as opposed to 16th on the season. So actually getting some boards there. Christian Koloko and Chris Boucher, but also obviously Siakam being in there. So I mean, on the season, they've had this FU mentality as 9-5 as away dogs against the spread, and basically an even, playing their opponents at an even pace there, minus 0.9 margin of victory that they're failing to win by. So it's basically a pick 'em at that point for them when they're the away dogs. And yeah, you mentioned the stuff that I was going to bring up too, in terms of just all the things that they do well, or at least the key things that you always see Toronto with Nick Nurse's Toronto, I should say, and Pascal Siakam's Toronto. All those, when those two guys basically together are the reason this team is always going to get points off turnovers, second chance points, and fast break points. They're going to crash the glass. They're going to get out in transition, and they're going to get, they're going to basically hawk the ball to be able to get those turnovers. Because once again, they have a putrid, half-court offense that someone like Kawhi Leonard was huge for, because he could bail them out without having to necessarily move the ball too much. So, with and without OG, the defensive ratings are better. They play a bit faster pace though, as well, because of the fact that they get those points off turnovers. So I think that's another. That's really what it comes down to for me, is the points off turnovers to get to that over, but more importantly for them to keep it within 6 points. And last thing I would just mention is they've been done a much better job at defending the 3 as well. As we know, Golden State needs to hit those threes when OG's on there on the floor. They allow 3 less threes made a game. And last time he wasn't out there when they played earlier this season, the Dubs went for 18 triples in that one without either Gary Trent or OG Anunoby. Both guys who will be in this game and defend the 3 really well.
But they also produce on offense. And Andrew Wiggins is questionable. That's going to be a huge pivoting point in terms of, if he's out, you got to like points more, because he is absolutely vital for the Warriors for defending this rangy Raptors team. I mean, you throw out all these things that I don't expect the Raptors to just fold. I don't think that they're a team that of that type, and they do have good numbers as a road dog and etc. But it's really just the Warriors against themselves in some sense that with all these mistakes, all these turnovers, second chance points, and when they're locked in, we've seen them play really well. I mean, we've also seen them just lose against some of the worst teams in the league at home, with or without Steph. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes they just an avalanche of mistakes. But this is their only game until Monday. Last game of 3 at home. They get 2 days off after this. I just think we'll see a pretty sharp Warriors team. And that, to me, means offense. It does mean a much better chance of an over because they're still playing that small ball lineup of different varieties and trying to ramp up the pace. And they're more comfortable in a high-scoring game. They don't want to get into a 106-105 game with Toronto, which is the only time, 4 meetings ago that these teams were even close at the end. It's not usually like a knockdown drag out. It's usually like one team gets an advantage and presses it, and the last 3 meetings between these have been decided by about 15. So that's why I feel okay about Warriors -5 or 6.
That's fair. I'm just using some more recent history to say I think Toronto's going to hit a few more threes, hang around a bit more. And yeah, I guess, in my head, the way I picture that, then, it was closer to like 120, 116 in that range. Still gets you over, but I still think even at an over pace that this team can stay close and hang with the Dubs in this one a little bit better than they did last time. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. Got a couple other videos to end this work week for you guys. Until we see you next, happy betting.